What piece of history is deliberately being erased from existence? Rohingya is a very interesting one. They have been indigenous to the Rakhine state for centuries before being driven out in 2016. They were butchered and murdered, raped and expelled with all evidence of being omitted from Burmese records. They now are spread all across Asia, where they are met with great hostilities and are currently globe-hopping, longing to return home. There were more countries in the Axis force than just Germany, Italy and Japan. The Banana Republics. In WW2, how France people in general were pretty okay and open to Nazi ideals. Under occupation, shipping people to camps etc. But they pretty much rewrote the history, glorifying the resistance force who were just a little group of individuals resisting Nazi occupation. If anyone is more knowledgeable about the topic than me, please inform me, but from what I've picked up through podcasts and documentaries, the British and Irish governments are desperately trying to forget collusion in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. There's heavy accusations of collaboration between MI5, RUC and loyalist paramilitaries and the Gardaí, Irish Army and the Provisional IRA. But there's still a lot of people alive who would be compromised if all the information came out. Serbs desperately try to negate all the atrocities they did all over Bosnia. Expansionist Japan and the atrocities they committed during the 1930s are completely skipped over in most school curriculum, even though it was less than 100 years ago. I've always found that baffling. We had human zoos until 1958, rushed face, fearful face, exploding head. The radical politics of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., particularly toward the end of his life. He was far more radical than what is conventionally touted. Corporations wrap themselves in MLK quotes on January 15th and April 4th. But if Dr. King were alive today, he would be horrified at the level of wealth that these private sector entities have accumulated, while we continually fail to provide the basic necessities for human dignity, such as affordable housing and living wages. His anger wouldn't just be directed at wealthy corporate interests but at the many, progressive, special interests that promote idealistic solutions to satisfy their own self-righteousness but result in nothing for the people they are supposedly fighting for. So in Sri Lanka, the British left two rival kingdoms as one democratic country. Predictably, the larger Sinhala kingdom voted their own people in and started persecuting the people who'd belonged to the smaller Tamil kingdom. After many race riots in which many Tamil men, women and children were hacked to death and burned alive while the Sinhalese police stood by or joined in, a small number of victims managed to organize their own resistance force, the LTTE. They fought and negotiated for independence, or at least a two-state system, so they could run their own country instead of the Sinhalese, but were called terrorists. After a huge injection of aid money to Sri Lanka after the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, surprise, the Sinhalese government somehow now had a lot more weapons. They finished off what they'd started, killing Tamils indiscriminately. At the end they refused international observers, aid workers, UN, journalists, access, told the Tamils, "We're only attacking combatants. So go here to the safe exclusion zone if you're just a civilian," and then shelled the civilians, including women and children. In that zone, tens of thousands dead. They say there's peace now in Sri Lanka. Can you really call it that when the bad guys just finished murdering all their victims? https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Sri Lankan Civil War. Sweden tried to assimilate Sami people by outlawing their language in schools and outlawing yoiking, traditional chanting, and drumming. Sami women were secretly sterilized by the Swedish government, and that program lasted until the 1970s. BTW's secret sterilization without consent happened to Native American women at IHS hospitals in the United States through the 1970s, and in Australia to Aboriginal women as well. The secret police in communist Romania, the Securitate, who would arrest, beat and torture those who opposed the regime, and its numerous collaborators who stabbed their neighbors in the back for benefits. I feel like it's not talked about enough. Right now there are a lot of older people who were part of the Securitate who never got punished for their actions. You can just see them walking on the street. Panama Papers. Tibetan history, language, culture, religion. It's being erased daily, right now, and has been being erased for 60+ years now. Korean comfort women used by the Japanese occupation force during WW2. Japanese war crimes and atrocities that the rest of the civilized world had a chance to save the genocide of the German Jews. But the willingness to do something wasn't there. In the conference in Evian in 1938, the world leaders met to discuss how to prevent the genocide. But very few countries actually offered to receive any significant number of refugees of common people. Not really talked about today. But Jews were generally not considered good citizens in most places. And the world leaders were afraid of the public to accept Jewish refugees. Except for scientists, musical artists, and wealthy families. Adolf Hitler said ahead of the conference that if they were so concerned about the Jewish population, he would gladly ship all German Jews on a luxury liner to any country that would accept to receive them. After the conference, his conclusion was that the genocide wouldn't meet any sincere opposition from the Allies since they refused to do anything about it other than talk. Wikipedia. Not erased but little known outside Alsace and Moselle. The story of the Malgré nous. In spite of ourselves. These are the people who, after the German invasion during the Second World War, had to fight on the German side. Otherwise their families would be shot or sent to concentration camps. Everyone seems to know about North Korea being a nasty place. But they forget the country that's fighting it out with NK to be worst in any given category. Eritrea. It's in Africa, across the strait from Yemen, and very not part of Ethiopia. Military dictator. The law is what he says it is. Conscription, displacement, the works, but little corruption. See, the law is what he says it is, which means that anything he does is legal. And if anyone does what he doesn't want, they've committed suicide. Japanese death squads in WW2. They terrorized surrounding Asian countries and pretend it never happened. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.